Rakesh Sood, the former ambassador, that you've got France, in a sense, upholding secular values. You've got countries from the Western world and India coming out in support of France, but you've got the Islamist world on the other hand uniting and even calling for the boycott in some instances of France and almost endorsing the action of beheading last week and, dare I say, what happened today. So the world is getting divided between the Islamist world and the so-called Western civilization and its definition of secular values. Mr. Sood, can you hear me, Rakesh?
Yes, I can.
You know, and the Indian response seems to be to support France.
Well, yes, I think, it is an important point, Rajdeep, that France has historically had a very strong stand on secularism. In fact, they have laws about it, which are very categorical. And it is these laws that they try to uphold. There is a very, very clear separation between the church and the state. Mm-hmm. The church meaning any religion, whatever it be your religion, you keep that within your home, as it were. Mm-hmm. And anything to do with the state is that is not permitted. In fact, in 2004, they introduced a law where they said that any ostentatious depiction of religious symbols is completely banned in public offices. Like whether it is a cross, whether it is hijab or anything like that. So there is a very clear separation that these are religious symbols.
But it's also, Rakesh, in a new France. Isn't a new, more multi-faith, plural France? How do you manage the diversity then?
The second thing is that France in Europe has the largest number of Muslims. In fact, the number of Muslims in France is something like about 6 million out of a total population of about 65 million. So that's like slightly over 9%. It is by far the largest population of Muslims in France. The third factor, I think, which we need to remember is that there have been leaders in some of the Islamic countries who have reacted very violently to the statements that were made by President Macron. I mean, you take the case of Erdogan in Turkey. Mm-hmm. The Turkish president basically said that he needs to, his mental health is a problem. And then we had the issue in Pakistan where Imran Khan talked about the fact that he was being that President Macron was being Islamophobic. Now, with this kind of reaction, with these kind of statements, what is clearly happening is that it is generating a sentiment among the people. And it's like a wolf whistle.
Sure.
And that then leads to this kind of reaction where you have these lone wolf attacks thing where people get agitated and they indulge in something like this.
You make a fine point on that, and many of these are lone attacks. But the fact, Taha Siddiqui, is it therefore, as the Islamic world suggests, examples of Islamophobia? Or is it simply France reiterating its commitment to certain secular values, which Muslims who live in France will have to embrace?
No, definitely Muslims in France or in the West or around the world need to, there's a definite need of reforming Islam. But where will this reform come from? Will it come from the West? Because when the West talks about this reform, it's perceived as an attack on Islam. This reform needs to come from the Muslim world. Blasphemy laws are, as the previous speaker mentioned, this is dog whistling, and we see this blasphemy laws in Pakistan, in Saudi Arabia, and other Muslim countries. They sort of endorse this violence from the state when someone talks against Prophet or critiques Prophet or Islam. But that needs to change. The fact that Muslims feel this insult and Muslims feel derogated when this happens, they need to understand that, but that needs to come from the Muslim world. The issue of Islamism can only be resolved and solved with the Muslim world.
But it's not coming, Taha.
The West, what it needs to do is it needs to realize more about the discrimination, the colonization, the history of colonization, and address those issues and those problems where there's a vacuum of addressing, and that vacuum is being filled by these Islamic Islamist and Muslim nations around the world. So the solution has to be twofold. The Muslim world has to reform Islam, look at blasphemy again, and do away with blasphemy laws. But at the same time, the Western world needs to see the issues of discrimination, the history of colonization, and deal with that.